In our headline today, potentially disturbing news out of Transunion about the state of credit in America. And here hanging out with us live on the Fireside app as we record for the podcast, my old friend Charlie Wise is here. How are you, man?
I'm doing well, thanks. How you doing today?
Well, I'm doing good, but it seems to me, just looking at a high level at your recent report, that there's a lot of Americans maybe not doing well. Tell me what's going on with, let's start at this. What are all the different pieces of credit that you looked at in your most recent report?
We look across the entire U.S. consumer credit landscape, and we are looking both at an account level and a consumer level. So we essentially are looking at credit cards, auto loans, mortgages, personal loans, student debt. We really try to understand that whole consumer wallet, how consumers are using credit, how they're performing on the credit they have. Does it seem like they've got capacity? Are they overstretched? All that. And we try to bring together a comprehensive picture of essentially what's the landscape and what are we able to divine from that in terms of opportunities as well as risks that lenders and others ought to be paying attention to.
Boy, it looks like a lot of risk all over the place right now, if I'm reading the tea leaves correctly. Let's start off with credit card balances. Your team writes that those remain near record highs at $9.17 billion. I'm assuming that's the U.S. number, a near 20% increase year over year, near 20% increase since last year. And I remember last year you were a little disturbed about the numbers happening with credit cards.
We've seen a tremendous, I'll call it rebound in credit card debt. So remember, little history time capsule. Early days of the pandemic, when the market was flooded with a lot of government stimulus, enhanced unemployment, and people weren't spending. Right? People just were home and they weren't traveling, they weren't going to restaurants. A lot of excess liquidity, and people did what smart people do is they use that excess liquidity to pay down their most expensive debt, which is usually credit cards and personal loans. So we saw this big trough early on in the pandemic, and then a lot of the stimulus ended. This scary monster called inflation started raising its head mid 2021, and that's when we started to see balances picking back up. For a while, we were saying, okay, they're essentially rebounding from the troughs they've seen, but we've now seen them at a balanced level surpass where they were pre-pandemic in 2019, and we're now essentially at or near record balances. They are down. I will say that we've seen that quarterly dip that we normally see in Q1 came down a bit in Q1, as people normally do. They have their post holidays shopping hangovers. They get their tax refund checks. They pay down their cards. So it's nice to see that seasonality there, but we are still near record levels in terms of balances.
I get all that history, Charlie, but I was hoping, as we were broadcasting during the pandemic, that people had learned their lesson, and finally we were doing the right thing and not spending so much of other people's money. But this gets even worse. I want to bring in the next statistic: unsecured personal loans up 26.3% year over year in Q1. I got to think that you take those two numbers and couple them together, we maybe this idea that so many people don't budget, so many people don't track their expenses, like I kind of think that's where this comes from. Would you agree?
So you look at the picture of the headline balances and you say, "Oh, this is a problem. Like, consumers have a lot of debt," is the first thing that comes to your mind. Again, if you look at the context of where this is, the average card balance per consumer was up quite a bit, $5,700 in the most recent quarter. So if you got a credit card and carry a balance, on average, it's $5,700. And that's up about close to 15% year over year. But
Wow.
it's still, that number is still below where it was in 2019.
Pre-pandemic.
So, pre-pandemic, you've seen the headline balances up. The average per consumer, though, is a bit down. And the reason is that a lot of consumers that weren't carrying a balance on credit card or didn't have a credit card entered the market during the pandemic, because as we started to emerge from the troughs, as consumers were paying down their debt, a lot of card issuers and a lot of lenders basically said, consumers looking pretty good right now, let's get more cards out in the market. And a lot of these cards went out many of them to below prime borrowers, people that during the early days of the pandemic were having trouble getting credit. Lenders essentially opened their credit spigots wide and started filling up the
Ah,
bathtub. And a lot of the people that joined, I mean, we saw over 10 million people that didn't have a card get a card between mid 2021 and 2022. And many of those people are riskier borrowers who do carry, on average, lower balances. But what we saw is that a lot of new people are in the market. So there's some good numbers, but it also is a little bit alarming because some of the that growth in balances are people that may be riskier, and guess what? A lot of those riskier people aren't borrowing to finance vacations or their
yeah.
third Peloton. They're
Yeah.
financing, they're paying for groceries and gas and rent because that's all much more expensive.
Yeah, great points. And I also always love, Charlie, your glasses, maybe half full approach, where, where I'm a little bit not quite there. Let's move on to mortgages with
Yeah.
interest rates up. What's going on there?
So it is a great time to have a mortgage if you got your mortgage before 2022. It's what I'll say. And so that, as you look at some of the areas that you called, concerning or maybe alarming, the credit cards and the unsecured personal loans. The reality is that the consumer credit market is dominated in terms of balances by mortgages. And anybody with a mortgage and a decent credit score took advantage of the near zero interest rates and refinanced their mortgage in 2020, 2021, and is right now sitting at sub 4%, in many cases, sub 3% interest rates.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
me, who's had a mortgage for pretty much my whole adult life, is now sitting at a mortgage that's not going to change in rate for the next 15 years. That's good news. So, what we actually see right now is that on average, if you look at total household debt as a percentage of income, near record lows over the last 40 years. But averages are deceiving, right? Because
Yeah.
it's great news if you have a mortgage. There's lots of people out there who are renters instead. Renters don't have that same security. They don't have fixed payments for the next 15 years like I do. They're seeing their rents increase, and that's putting a big strain on their wallets. So it's really kind of a tale of two Americas. The homeowners, those that didn't buy in the last 6 months, are probably doing pretty well relative to where they were before. The people who are renting and the people who are using credit to make ends meet, they're probably struggling.
It'd be an interesting study to see how, with the credit card balances up to like percentage of those people who are homeowners versus renters, just that one piece of their budget that's the same. I'm sure that's
Yep.
beyond the scope of what you guys looked at.
We look at all kinds of things. I don't have the stats off the top of my head, but that's the reality is that a lot of consumers who are homeowners are, again, they're doing relatively much better. So what
Yeah.
we've seen with the mortgage market, though, is as you know, with rates, what has that done to the refi market? A lot of people, have always used their homes as a source of borrowing. There is, Joe, almost $20 trillion of untapped equity in people's homes today. That's basically, excess equity that they could be borrowing against. That's the size of the economy of Japan that's sitting in untapped equity in people's homes. But what are they not able to do right now? They can't refinance their homes to get a cash out
Right.
because they don't want to knock that 3% mortgage out of bed to go get $50,000 and all of a sudden they're paying 7%. So what do? They're now turning to this old product that fell out of favor back in 2008, 2009, the home equity loan. So we've seen a real resurgence in borrowing home equity loans, lines of credit, of people who are saying, I'm sitting on this treasure trove of wealth. I need some money. I'm going to go and take advantage of that. And so that's what we've seen, for the homeowners. They've been able to tap into that source of wealth in a way that they really haven't in quite a while.
All through the pandemic, we saw car prices all over the place. In fact, I remember watching a video maybe 9 or 10 months ago of a guy that's a consultant to car dealerships saying, car salespeople need training on how to sell again, because as you know, Charlie, people would walk in and the car salesperson wasn't selling. They were just going, no, you'll take what I give you. Darn it.
Exactly. Like, congratulations. We're going to let you have a car today, right?
Right. Exactly. What's going on with car debt today?
So car debt is following the exact trajectory of car prices, which is up, up, up. And what we're seeing now is that we are seeing extremely high levels of basically average balance per auto lender. Let's see if I have any statistics off the top of my head. But yeah, so the average amount financed on a new vehicle, $41,000. On a used vehicle, people are borrowing on average 26,000 over
Wow.
$26,000. I mean,
Wow.
I'm just, I joke about the fact that when I was in college in 19 that I paid $300 for my
Right.
1976 Volkswagen Rabbit. People are now borrowing, not even paying, borrowing $26,000 for a used vehicle these days because prices are so high and they're so elevated. The other thing is we've got a whole study on this. I won't spend a lot of time on it, but a lot of consumers, particularly on the used side, their loan to value is well over 100%, in some cases over 140%. You're basically, if you got a $10,000 vehicle, as a for instance, they're borrowing $14,000 to finance that $10,000 vehicle. Why? Because they got to pay off the note on the old car they're trading in that's still underwater. So there's a lot of debt out there on the auto side because vehicles are so expensive, and frankly, the auto lenders want and need to, you know, uh,
Turnover.
essentially get people. Yeah, they want to get people in new
Yeah.
cars, and they want to get that trade in. They want to keep things flowing. We are starting to see some loosening up. We're starting to see increased shipments of new vehicles, and that's going to have a trickle on effect as people are wanting those new vehicles and maybe trading in the used ones they've been sitting on. So we're hoping that we see some looseness there. But we have seen a big surge in vehicle financing. To be honest, the new vehicle lending market is doing just fine in terms of delinquencies. We are seeing some weakness in the performance of consumers on those used auto loans, just because the amounts are so high, and they're having to grapple with the fact that back in 2020, the average amount financed was $20,000 on a used vehicle. Now it's 26,500.
Charlie, if people are looking to make their credit better, they're looking to get more educated. I know you guys have a bunch of great educational stuff. They just go to transunion.com, or is there a slash someplace that we should send people for more?
If you go to transunion.com, there's a whole consumer section on there. Rather than try to remember the URLs, transunion.com. It's a brand new website we just launched in the last couple of months. That's really laid out nicely. You got your business section. If you're a lender, great, go there, get all kinds of these great insights. If you're a consumer, this is going to take you to a section which is all about your credit, where you can access your free TransUnion credit report once a month through the end of this year, as well as get all this education on what does your credit report mean?
Yeah.
How do you think about improving your credit? What are some things that are important? How do credit scores work? What should you be thinking about if you are in the market to buy an automobile? If you want to buy a home, what do you have to think about from a credit perspective? All those resources are available.
We just had Aaron Lowry on from Broke Millennial a few weeks ago, and Aaron
Mm-hmm.
was talking to us about some of the credit myths that people have, and you should go to a site like TransUnion and get the real facts instead of thinking that carrying a balance on your credit card will make your credit. And why this stuff persists year after year, Charlie, is beyond me. But thank you so much. We will link, by the way, to TransUnion and to anything that we can do to help you with your credit at stackingbenjamins.com at our show notes. Charlie, great seeing you again. Thanks for helping us stay smart with our credit, my friend. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Joe.
All right, guys, that's my part. Now it's your part. If you're on YouTube with us, if you joined us during, we have Charlie Wise here from TransUnion. He's agreed to spend a couple minutes. I think we got him for 8 or 9 more minutes, where he can take your question. So grill this guy. Let's watch him sweat. No, I'm kidding. I don't know. I don't know what would he actually make you sweat. I do have a question while we're waiting to see if we have questions from the live audience. I mentioned Aaron Lowry and talking about the biggest myths, and actually Michael, who couldn't make it, said, "What are the biggest myths around how to make your credit better?" That actually made me think of Aaron in that interview.
Yeah. So a lot of people think that, to be honest, if I close down accounts, if I close down my extra credit cards, that's going to make my, my credit look better. Um, in many cases, what you're going to get is the exact opposite. So think of it this way: a big component of credit scores is built off of credit card utilization, the percentage of your balances as a percentage of your total credit limits. If you've got 3 credit cards, each with a $5,000 credit limit, and you've got um, total $5,000 of balances, you got a 33% utilization, right?
Yeah.
Not great, but pretty good. You want to keep that, you know, you really target trying to keep that below 30%. Ideally, if you can, keep it down below 10%. Well, all of a sudden, if I close down one of my 3 credit cards, the one I'm not using, my
Oh,
my credit limit drops from 15,000 to 10,000. What happens to my utilization? It goes from 33% to 50%. That's going to ding your credit score, and pretty significantly too. So what we're saying is, don't necessarily use your credit cards. Keep your open limits, keep them available. Don't necessarily close down accounts, because there's factors that have to do with your access to credit, what your utilization of your credit limits are, and also just how many active accounts you have. Again, it's sort of paradoxical to saying, boy, if I have more open accounts, that's good for my credit. Well, actually, it shows that you have the ability to manage multiple accounts. You have the ability to essentially budget and take care of those multiple accounts. So somebody that just has a single credit card and that's it may not have as good a credit score, even if they pay their bills every month, as somebody who's got 2 credit cards and an auto loan and a mortgage, for instance.
which is funny. That's a question I didn't know if I was going to get to, and I think you might have answered it. Alyssa asked, "What's the biggest thing I can do to make my credit go up right away?" Is that utilization?
I think utilization is something that consumers can, again, they can work with. If you've got active credit cards, if you've got a decent credit score, or you have a good relationship with that lender, call them up, contact them, ask them for a credit limit increase, particularly if you've got, good income, or you've seen a raise in the last year or two. Contact your lender and say, hey, I'd love to spend more on my credit card. Can you increase my limit? That's going to drop your utilization, may actually help you out. Or consider applying for an additional credit card. That's going to give you that additional limit. Not saying you got to run out and go on a shopping spree when you get that new card, but you've now got additional limit you can take care of. Obviously the other of like the big two, utilization, the other is on time payments. And it's you can't necessarily make mistakes, whoopses go away from 3 or 4 months ago. But if you essentially make sure that you are not forgetting to pay your bills, not being late on those payments, making at least the minimum payment on your credit cards every month, those on-time payments will start to accumulate in terms of that track record, and some of your older whoopses will definitely start to fade into the background, as the months pass.
You'll be proud of me, Charlie. When I was a financial planner and people would have trouble paying their bills, one of the first things we'd always do would be to use that automation on the credit card just to pay the minimum every month. I had a client who was
Absolutely.
making almost $300,000 a year, and she was just so busy with her job, because to demand that kind of money 15 years, I mean, to demand that money today is already shows you what type of job she had. But 15
Mhm.
years ago, her job
Yeah.
was just tremendous, and she would always forget to make her payment. So I said, all you got to do is automate that. And her credit score went up so quickly. I'd say within a year, just by doing, and then she'd pay it off in full, but that would be later. Instead of making a late payment that was full every month, she'd make the minimum payment, and it might not have been the perfect solution, but it made that on-time payment thing work. So
You
automation, I
just
think, works in your favor.
you just don't have those dings over there. And yeah, we look at it, we call it payment sticks. We can look back, 84 months of history shows up on your credit report. If you pull your credit report, you'll see for every account those payment sticks, those on-time payments. That's gold for a credit score. So even the minimum, it still counts as an on-time payment.
We had seen, there have been some bloggers that have taken issue with some of the ways that, and you've seen all of these, Charlie, about how credit is is not manufactured, is looked at. And I know that for renters for a long time, if I was a renter, pay my rent on time, did not do anything for my credit score, although that certainly showed that I wasn't a risk. Karen has a question in the audience. She says, does not paying the electric bill or phone bill change your credit score?
So for the most part, electric utilities, mobile companies do not report to the bureaus. And we'd love for that to happen. Like that's something that we're actively working with. There's so many people that may not have a lot of history with credit cards and auto loans and mortgages, but you know what? They pay their rent, they pay their phone bill, they pay their utilities every month. Those on-time payments, we've done lots and lots of research. Those are absolutely predictive. The issue is getting those companies to report to the bureaus. It's not just as easy as like, hey, here's some data, have some fun. There's a whole process they have to set up around dispute resolution. I won't get into details, but we are working with them because that is a huge piece of financial inclusion. I would love for somebody who's been making 5 years of on-time rental payments to be able to get the positive benefit of those timely payments and be able to use those to get a good credit score, because maybe that renter wants to buy a home and they want that track record. So I would love to say that yes, those on-time payments of electric bills and phone bills are going to help you. I can't promise that those people are reporting today. We have a small number that are, but most are not.
I have a last question. It's kind of weird. Rocky, you're hanging out with us here. You could come up on stage and ask yourself. He went over to YouTube and wrote his question at YouTube. If it's the same Rocky, we might have two Rockies following us today. I don't know. But Rocky says, if my total credit card limit is $100,000 across all credit cards, let's say my balance is $10,000, so 10% credit card utilization. Mm-hmm. Does it matter if this 10K balance is on one card versus across multiple cards? Does it matter where the utilization comes from?
Nope. It's calculated. All of your credit limits added together, all your balances added together. It's that utilization. So, I would not suggest that spreading your limits across multiple cards is any better than on a single card. And to be honest, if you're, a significant spender and want to get the rewards, I would say go ahead and use whatever card is going to give you the best rewards, or maybe it has the best rate if you're going to carry balances, and don't worry about how they're spread out.
Thank you, Charlie, for joining us and for helping our stackers with their credit. I super appreciate it. It was great to see you again.
You too.
For everybody out there, we're going to have more guests like Charlie. As you guys know, we're here fairly, we've been here a lot. We haven't been here lately because I took this beautiful trip to Spain, but now that I'm back, Karen and I know it was awesome. It was so awesome. My credit card utilization might've been high when I was up there. No.
Pay it down.
Yeah, I paid it right off, but man, I had that plastic out a lot, I felt like. But for everyone, here's what you do to make sure that you catch the next one. Either sign up for our newsletter, the 201, stackingbenjamins.com/201. Be a member of the Basement Facebook group, or follow us on YouTube. Those are the three ways to know, or follow us here. Just join up. If you're on YouTube watching this, join us on the Fireside app, which is, as I mentioned earlier, more fun every time I get on here. They're really innovating. I don't know if you know this, Charlie. This is a Mark Cuban backed company that is just exploding lately. So
I didn't know that, but that's great to see that the Sharks putting all that shark money to work.
I know, right?